All right, guys, what's the number one thing that you want to know? When is this trade deal going to happen? So I brought in the source here on a Friday behind studio to tell us what exactly that will be. And no, he has an answer. This is not clickbait. So Tim, tell me, where do you think that we stand with this trade deal and what needs to happen to make it go through?
Well, if you're talking about the China trade deal, and it is complicated, okay?
Yeah.
It's complicated somewhat by the U.S. economy is just on fire, still basking in the blockbuster jobs report from last week. And some economists around the street are starting to raise their GDP projections for 2020, where the Fed is looking at GDP of 2.0%. Some people are raising their projections as high as 2.5. I talked with one very, very well-known economist the other day who says he's at 2.5 and he thinks he's going to be low. So if the economy is really going to be that strong, and if we've got increasing pressure on the Democrats to pass the USMCA trade deal in very early 2020, we've got a pending trade deal that's going to go into effect with Japan on Jan 1. If Boris Johnson is going to run the table in the UK elections, we'll likely have a trade deal with the UK. That gives Trump tremendous leverage to drive a harder bargain with China on the trade deal with them, which means if China's still going to be reluctant to give in on a lot of the issues that the U.S. wants, that trade deal could be pushed off. It could be pushed off into the second quarter. It could be pushed out closer to the election. So if you're buying the market, and there are a lot of reasons to do it, don't do it just because you think the U.S.-China trade deal is imminent. Now, we could very likely get a phase one deal. There were headlines at the end of the week leaning toward that, but clearly we've seen this many times where we get conflicting stories as to how close a trade deal is.
Well, that's nice that you pointed out that it can actually happen, because basically if you're an investor, you have your tweet deck on, you're just seeing something about a trade deal happening, something about a trade deal not happening, and it's like, what is it going to take to make it happen? It just seems the same
I
thing.
think the most important thing for the investor is to get to the point where you realize that the market, and more importantly the economy, can deal with a trade deal that might not happen until the middle of 2020. It's not an end-all and be-all for the U.S. economy to do really well next year.
Okay, wait, I have one more question. So, do you think that when we get a trade deal, are we going to go back to China buying our soybeans? Like, is everything going to be the same again, or is there going to be some new industries that can come out of it?
Well, there will still be some concern on China's requirement that U.S. technology firms share their intellectual property in joint ventures, and there will still be concern about who's going to really rule the 5G space going forward for the next decade or two. But there will definitely be a lot of activity and a lot of buying by China. The Chinese really have a tremendous amount of pressure on them to at least do a deal in the agriculture and livestock space because of the problems that they're having with their hog crops being poisoned with swine flu, et cetera, et cetera. They need that product.